Hi everybody, welcome to Sage and Seer. I'm Janey Ali and it's Friday 26th of March 2001 and you're really welcome, and I'm just really excited about starting this YouTube channel. It's been on my mind for about a year now, and of course everything kind of hit and ended up having 4 kids at home, a business to run, and this kind of got put on the back burner. So what I'm doing is I want to showcase the incredible array of complementary, alternative, holistic, weird, wild and wonderful healing modalities that are out there for everybody to try and to utilize, and just to not be kind of hogwashed into always relying on pharmaceutical medication. There's so much more you can do for yourself to empower yourself, to strengthen your immunity. And by bringing on all these amazing guest speakers, it gives them an opportunity to showcase what they do, how they can help you. You can get to know them through the conversations that are about to unfold. And if you've got any questions, of course, put them in the chat. We really want to empower everybody to take responsibility for their health. This has been taken away from us at a rapid rate over the last kind of 100 years. And I think that's the first point that you have to recognize in your journey with healing, is that you're responsible for yourself and nobody else can kind of take that away from you. And as soon as you have that deep understanding and connection with yourself that your healing is your responsibility, you're already opening up those pathways to to responsible healing, taking back that power, and just being happier, I think, and much more present, and having a deeper understanding of how your body works, and then you can help your family as well. So I hope you enjoy these chats. I'm really delighted to bring on this amazing lady, Ali Welfare. Ali is a homeopath as well, so it's a great pleasure to have her on here. I met her years ago. She was one of my tutors when I was training at the Irish School of Homeopathy in Dublin, and it was great to meet her. Actually, on that first day we had an instant connection because a mutual friend of ours had contacted her to say she would be teaching me. And she approached me that day and we had a great chat, and we've had a really good connection on the internet ever since. And in the past year, Ali's actually been a huge beacon of light. She's been fighting for everybody's freedom, helping educate everybody about what's been going on. And it's with great pleasure to welcome Ali Welfare to the show. Thanks, Ali.
Hello there. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here, Janey. Really good.
It's really great to have you, Ali. It's really great to see you. And, I think maybe we just start off and you can introduce yourself a little bit and tell the viewers, how you came to be a homeopath, and just a little bit about your journey towards what brought you to homeopathy. That would be really interesting. Even I don't know that.
No, you don't know that story.
Yeah.
Okay, so I grew up in a family that all used, ordinary pharma medicine. Didn't have any, I never come across anything holistic. Nobody in the family used it, as far as I know. And when I was 24, so I was at university, did a degree in history and archaeology. First one in my family to go to university. Back then there were grants available, so I was able to go. And then the years after I finished that, I got really sick with food allergies. So I ended up with feel blisters all over my skin that itched. I mean, they drove me demented. The itch was awful. And I went to the doctor, because I didn't know any different, and I got prescribed antihistamines and steroids, and I took those for probably about 9 months every day.
Yeah.
And I felt absolutely really unwell on them, and eventually went back to the doctor and said, look, can I find out what it is I'm allergic to? Because if I know what I'm allergic to, then I can avoid the things that I'm allergic to, and then I won't need to take these drugs, and I won't need to feel so lousy, basically. And she said, yeah, you can, but there's a year's waiting list on the NHS to get to see an allergy specialist.
Wow.
So basically, I couldn't, the thought of waiting a year was just horrendous, and I couldn't afford to go private. I'd come out of college, had debts, etc. So in the meantime, a friend of mine said, look, why don't you go and see a kinesiologist? Now, I'd never heard of a kinesiologist, right? So I rang up this guy, and he went, told me what he did a bit on the phone. And he said, what I need you to do is bring along all the foods that you eat, wrapped up in little bits of cling film about the size of your thumb.
Yeah.
The night before I was due to go and see him, I was opening up like tins of tuna and baked beans, and I smoked to that point. So I thought, sure, I'll put in a bit of tobacco as well. And, everything I ate, basically, like I think of, got my little bits of cling film, putting the little bits of the food in. So I went along to see this guy, and he laid me down on a massage table, and he said, right, I need you to put your arm up in the air. So I'm like doing an Nazi salute, like doing Nazi
What the
salute.
heck?
And he said, I'm going to push against your arm, and I want you to resist the push. So I was able to resist his push. And he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put each of the foods on your stomach one after the other. So do one and then take it, check the what you call the reflex.
Yes.
Take that off and then check another one. And about the 10th thing, I mean, he'd opened up the plastic bag that I'd brought with all the foods in, wrapped up in the bits of cling film. And he, he's doing one after the other. And about this, maybe the 7th or 8th one in, he put this thing on something. And of course, I didn't know what he was picking out of the bag. My arm went completely weak.
Wow.
And I said to him, I'm really curious. So I said to him, what is going on? What was that? And he said, your stomach meridian, you have energy meridians that run up and down your body. And your stomach meridian is connected to your arm meridian. And basically, if you put anything on your stomach or eat anything that weakens you, it will show up in the strength of your arm. It will show up in your arm meridian.
It's amazing, isn't it? Amazing. Yeah.
Totally amazing.
The body's intelligence.
So at the end of it, really incredible. So at the end of it, there were 5 things that I was allergic to, according to him.
Okay.
And one of them that I was massively allergic to. And he said, this is the one, he held it up and he said, this is the one you're massively allergic to. And I took it from him and sniffed it. And I was like, oh, onions.
Oh, wow.
But at that point, my heart sank. I'm like, oh my God, of all the things to be, I'm living in Leeds at the time, which is like curry heaven.
Yeah.
Of all the things to be allergic to, onions is such a bummer because, I'm not going to be able to eat out. I'm not going to be able to eat any curries, So I was saying all this out loud and he said, oh no, don't worry. My wife's a homeopath. She'll be able to sort you out. So I'm a natural skeptic. So what I thought was, I'll go home and I'll avoid the things that he's told me I'm allergic to, and especially the onions, and I'll see how I am. And what I found was literally within 2 days, I was able to just wean myself off of the antihistamines, and then I slowly weaned myself off the steroids. Right?
Yeah. Wow.
So then I thought, about 3 months later, I thought, sure, maybe it's cured now, maybe it's gone. So I ate a curry and I completely flared again, itchy, watery, filled blisters all over my skin, right?
How big, Ellie? Like what size were the blisters? Were they kind of in clusters of small?
Probably about the size of the tip of my finger, of my small finger.
And when you say all over your body, were they literally everywhere?
All over my body.
Wow.
All over the body, but not the face.
Okay.
Yeah, mega.
Wow.
So I ring him up and I get his wife's phone number. His wife is a homeopath's phone number. And then in the meantime, another friend of mine had said, a woman that I worked with had said, sure, you must go and see this amazing homeopath called Rosie Foster. Now, Rosie sadly has passed, but anyway, so I decided to go and see Rosie. And even before I'd gone to see Rosie, I was thinking, of all the things to be allergic to, why suddenly am I allergic to onions? And I'm thinking, okay, when you peel and chop an onion, they make you cry. So maybe there's something I need to cry about, right? Now, I had a tricky childhood that way and a particularly tricky stepfather. And, thinking about those things, I shed a few tears, but it didn't seem to make any difference to the allergies. So I thought, oh, sure, that's a load of BS, basically. This mind-body connection, load of BS. So anyway, I went to see Rosie, spent 2 hours with her. She's asking me all these questions about what I'm like as a person and what kind of things have happened in my life. And at one point I stopped her and said, why are you asking me all these questions about what I'm like as a person? I've come to talk to you about my skin.
Yeah.
And she said, and it was the first time really I'd heard it articulated so well. She said, but you aren't separate from your skin. And your cells hold the memory of everything that has happened to you.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm asking you questions. So
Amazing. It's like that light bulb moment, isn't it? It's like, bing, there's something in this actually. It's triggered a cellular response in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after those 2 hours, she gave me 3 little white pills, a split dose of homeopathic remedy called carcinosin, which, as Janey knows, is made from the energy of cancer.
Yeah.
And my family is riddled with cancer, a hell of a lot of cancer in the background.
Okay.
My father, grandfather, so there's a lot of cancer in the family. And I took the white pills thinking, oh my goodness, I've just wasted my money. This is a load of rubbish. How can 3 white pills do this? Like, seriously. I had no belief that it was going to work. Not at all. Not one bit. Right.
Yeah.
So on the 9th night after I took them, I had a dream about something that had happened to me as a kid. So on the 10th morning, I woke up knowing that this dream was actually something that had happened to me. And I was in floods of tears, like really distressed.
Yeah.
And it was like having, like, literally this, it was like a voice kind of came into my head and said, if you do your healing about this, you won't need to express your grief on your skin.
Wow.
And from that day on, I never had a food allergy, never had an issue with anything that I eat. I'm absolutely fine. And that started me on the journey of going, oh my God, this stuff is absolutely amazing. I need to find out more about this. So I started to borrow some of my homeopaths, some of Rose's books.
Okay.
And then, so that was probably kind of October time when I was 24. And then the next summer, I was due to go on holiday to Ireland, and Rosie had met Nuala Ising. So Nuala Ising, for anybody that's listening, is the director of the Burns School of Homeopathy, an amazing homeopath.
Amazing lady.
So many wonderful homeopathic provings, homeopathic remedies to our materia medica. She's just amazing. So Rosie had met Nuala and said, look, if you're going to Ireland, why don't you go and check out, the Burns School of Homeopathy, see if you can find a homeopath called Nuala Ising. And I ended up meeting Nuala, and Nuala said, look, why don't you come and train with the homeopath? And it was
I'm
for
getting
me,
like tingles. Yeah.
For me, it was like coming home. It was like, okay, this is what you're meant to be doing. So I was just fascinated, reading everything I could get my hands on. And so then the following year,
so hang on, Ali, that was that 94, 95?
No, that was 1990. I was on holiday in 1990. I was on holiday in Ireland, and then I moved to Ireland in 1991, November the 11th, which is Armistice Day, so why I remember it. November the 11th, 1991, and then the following September, I started at the Burns School of Homeopathy. So 4-year course.
So that was that's County Clare, isn't it, the Burren? For those people who don't know. Yeah, and I mean, all the homeopaths that have come out of there that I've met are just in a league of their own, really. They're so different to kind of, I think she had a really strong angle on classically training you, but also was really contemporary and pushed boundaries in other ways that possibly some schools of homeopathy haven't done. I've never met her, but I think she's incredible from what I've read and heard. Go on, please.
The thing about, I've taught now in England and in the Irish School of Homeopathy, and also I ended up teaching in the Burns School of Homeopathy. Eventually Nuala asked me to come and teach. And the difference really between the 2 Irish schools anyway, between the Irish School of Homeopathy and the Burns School of Homeopathy, is Nuala's ethos was, in order to be a good homeopath, you need to do your own work. You need to know what your issues are if you're going to be working with people, and you need to be aware of them and also be committed to working on them, because obviously things come up.
Yeah,
So
of
we had a
course.
lot of psychotherapy training. We did drama therapy, for instance. Some of the weekends we had Bowen technique people come in and teach us. And she's, unless she's changed, she's pretty much a classical homeopath, but she was open to us having teachers that weren't just classical homeopaths. So for anybody that's listening that doesn't understand the difference, so classical homeopathy really has been, they say it's aligned to Hahnemann, who was the German doctor who founded homeopathy, or founded and found homeopathy.
Yeah.
But actually he didn't practice by giving one remedy and watching and wait, which is what essentially classical homeopathy is.
Yeah.
It was actually a homeopath called Kent who really said, you know, give one remedy and watch and wait.
Yeah.
But so Nuala essentially was really open to us learning, you know, developing different tools for our toolkit, basically.
Absolutely.
So we had, for instance, homeopaths that didn't give one remedy and watch and wait, homeopaths that would give one remedy, you know, and then maybe another remedy, a related remedy the next day. So we were taught the layers methods of practicing, prescribing. So yeah, it was a really good training, really
Yeah,
good.
and I think probably just for the viewers, there is in homeopathy, like Ali's saying, there's classically trained homeopaths, but as in any modality, there's lots of offshoots from that, and people find their own style and their own way and what works for them. And that's the same for homeopathy as well. Some people are very classical, and then some people will prescribe in a way that suits their practice and often give particular organ supports, or there's a homeopathic detox therapy method now. There's all kinds of ways to prescribe, and I think for me, I think that's the beauty of homeopathy, is that it's expansive like that. It's just important as an individual that you find a homeopath that meets your needs and that you have a resonance with. You know, like all the therapists I go to them because I have a connection with them. And I think, Ali, you'll understand that as well. Sometimes you treat a person for so long and then it's like the relationship comes to a natural end, but they still need help. So I have a kind of a repertoire of therapists who I kind of, you know, recommend them to, or I'll say, you know what, I think I've done the work that I need to do with you and you've come a long way, but possibly now you need another homeopath who does other, you know, other stuff than what I do. So I guess your whole journey, you've been on this path for so long now, your practice must have weaved in and out of so many different kind of styles and methods and ways of prescribing, and how you even take the case, for example.
Yeah, I mean, probably the way I take a case has been informed. I trained as a process worker as well, so the Arnold Mindell work, which is an offshoot of Jungian psychology, but with a big emphasis on body work. So my practice, the way that I take a case, would have certainly been informed a lot by that. Now, what you learn from that training is essentially you follow the channels of communication. So if somebody says, I've got an ache in my chest, you don't say to them, oh, how does that move? You say, tell me more about the feeling. So you're following the channels of communication. So equally, if somebody comes in and they've got tinnitus, you don't say, how does that feel to you? You say, what do you hear? So you stay in the same channel. And in that process, there's a natural amplification that happens. In amplification, as in attention being put on a physical symptom, often it starts to energetically change. And essentially, that's what homeopathy is. Homeopathy are, and this is so different from pharmaceutical medicine. So you go to see a regular doctor. A regular doctor will try and take away your symptoms. A homeopath is trying to do that, but it's also trying to help you understand why you have those physical symptoms in the first place.
Absolutely.
And that can be a very like big moment where you understand something, or it can be just a subtle shift and you just energetically the symptom energetically shifts. So for instance, with me, having that awareness that of that dream, you know, when I first took homeopathic medicines, the awareness of that dream showed me what healing I needed to do in order not to express my grief on my skin.
So all the vesicles like filled with water and bursting, instead of kind of you expressing that layer of grief, you know, from crying, for instance, the body's still trying to bring that to the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. It was still trying to say hello, need to be doing some work here. But it was so, I mean, I had really suppressed what had happened. I'd really blocked it out as a way of surviving it.
Absolutely.
So I'm not sure how long it would have taken for it to come up if I hadn't taken homeopathic remedy. And I think it's really important for, you know, this is so different from ordinary medicine, from, you know, pharma medicine, is that we really work with the mind, body, you know, the mind, so mental and emotional and physical symptoms, and that all physical symptoms, unless they are a poisoning, so unless you've taken, you know, you've eaten too much stuff that, you know, foods that have artificial fertilizers in, which is a poisoning, or you
glyphosate, for instance.
Or you lived in Chernobyl, the nuclear reactor, and you've got all that radiation, you know, and the impact of the radiation. Those are poisonings. But the other, probably about 90% of all physical symptoms have a mental and emotional component. And it's really important to remember that, because you and I know this, we see it a lot in practice. You know, we have patients that come and they've got this long list of physical symptoms, and you can see where the body keeps trying to go, hello, hello. And they take the allopathic medicines, the ordinary medicines, and it suppresses the symptoms. And so the vital life of the person's energy kind of tries to come up in a different way to go, hello.
It pops out somewhere else. Absolutely. I've had so many cases like that, you know, where the body's trying to express something. And that, I think, you know, there's time and place for pharmaceutical medicine. I'm not totally dismissing it, but the thing is that that's the action of it. It doesn't find the root cause of the problem, which is what we like to do in homeopathy. It suppresses the symptoms rather than going to the actual depths that we need to go to uncover what's actually going on for you. When did that imbalance start, and why is it manifesting the way that it is? It's just like, okay, you know, go to your doctor, here's your pills, you're on those for the rest of your life, and that's it, and we'll see you in 6 weeks' time for your next prescription. As homeopaths, we don't want you to keep coming back time and time again, you know, and constantly needing prescription after prescription. It's a real pursuit of health with homeopathy, and I think that's, a lot of people don't understand that, Ali, you know, that you come in and it's not that you keep coming back time and time again. I think I've had some amazing experiences with clients where they might have had to come, you know, for the first 3 appointments, they were quite close together because they had chronic anxiety, for instance. And then you've helped resolve that, and you don't hear or see from them for a year. And then you'll get a little message saying, oh, I keep getting a headache, or, you know, something else has come up, I've got a wart, or so they come in, and, you know, it's part of the, I think part of the specialness about being a homeopath is that we really want you guys to be well, and we want you, you know, I don't know about you, Ali, but I've tried to get a lot of my clients to buy a actual homeopathic kit so they can start to learn to prescribe for themselves and their family, and that's so empowering, isn't it, as part of the journey. You really you get to teach people those simple, you know, just the simple kind of acute illnesses that happen at home, that you get, any tummy bugs, coughs, colds, you know, diarrhea, constipation, headaches. Sometimes you can't always shift them, but then you know, you go and see your homeopath.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, back to that first point about, the job of, I say this to clients, but also to, when I teach, the job of being a homeopath is to do yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the only profession really that that's our job. Our job is to get people so well that they don't need to keep coming back. And
Yeah.
I've never advertised. It's always been word of mouth. And now
Wow,
I'm
that's incredible. Yeah.
yeah,
And how's your
and
practice going at the moment?
really busy, really
Yeah.
busy. But the other bit as well about, being a homeopath, and, one of the things I say, and again, yes, there's a place for pharmaceutical medicine, but I really believe that if people had homeopathy, and also we had, our food sources, our water and our air were a hell of a lot cleaner than they are, and that, that foods were all organic. This idea of
Yes.
labeling healthy food organic and the non-healthy food. Well, actually, no. It should be that you label the food that's full of chemicals. You label
Yeah,
that
that's
one as,
great.
chemical food, and every other food should be organic. So if people have, all of that right from the beginning, and they have homeopathy from the cradle onwards, you
Yes.
wouldn't have the waiting lists in hospitals that you have.
Yeah.
People's overall health would be so much better, and there wouldn't be they wouldn't, basically be poisoned by the side effects of the drugs that that the pharmaceutical industry prescribe. Because every pharmaceutical drug, as you and I know, has a side effect.
Yeah,
Every one.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I can actually, I've 4 children, right? And they were all born at home, all of them. And I can tell you now that, you know, they've hardly even been to the doctor. I think when I've had the first one, obviously he's 15 now, I wasn't a homeopath. I had an awareness of homeopathy. I was using it as a kind of, an acute prescriber. And a group of my girlfriends gave me the pregnancy kit from Helios when I was pregnant with them, and I used that in my labour and in my recovery. Um, and as an infant, he suffered with really bad ear infections. And so there was a period there where he had antibiotics. And even though I knew it wasn't right, I didn't have the knowledge then that I have now. And when he was around 18 months, I took him to the homeopath. And amazing lady in New Zealand called Lynn. And she just we went into her healing space, and she just watched him, and he just walked around the room, and he picked up an apple and he handed her the apple, and he was pulling his ear all right. And she, like your experience, she gave me a little bag of white tablets and said, give him one now and one tomorrow, which is a split dose, and one in the afternoon, and then just wait and see how he goes. And pulsatilla she gave him, and gave him that remedy, and like it was like a miracle. His earache just gone. And he'd been back and forth to the doctor, and the doctor wanted to put him on steroids, and I was like, no, no, no. But I had to, you have to learn that stuff yourself, and I guess my interest was really sparked in that moment. He has, I guess he's had a couple of other incidents, where I didn't treat him. But generally speaking, my kids are so healthy, and they only, it's homeopathy. They've had osteopathy. If I can't fix them, they all have their own homeopaths. And they have a chiropractor, and they have an acupuncturist and a physio. There's, all the healing modalities that I utilize for myself. They're also, I don't mind paying for my kids to see those kind of practitioners. And I think that's, I guess, part of what trips people up is that we have the NHS in the UK and the HSC here in Ireland, and because those services are free,
Mm-hmm.
it's easier,
Yeah.
isn't it easy for people just to go, oh, we'll just take them to the doctors instead of, you know. I think that's partly why I wanted to set the channel up as well, is to raise this awareness that going to a physio or a chiropractor isn't just for adults. Kids need to be adjusted as well. Sometimes that trauma of being born, you have to get the bones in their head, you know, sorted out and put back into kind of placement, because that can cause heaps of difficulties for children.
My son had that. I also gave birth at home, had a home birth, and just used homeopathy, no other pain relief other than homeopathy. And he had colic at about 4 weeks old. He had colic, and gave him homeopathy, and homeopathy wasn't doing it. And so I brought him to a cranial osteopath, a woman in Dublin called Pamela Singh, who, you know, has been a practitioner for like 40, 50 years, long time. And without me telling her anything about the birth, she, you know, she said, "Do you mind if I hold him?" And, you know, and so she took him from me. And just from holding him, she looked at me and she said, "He tore you as he came out. His left shoulder got stuck, and he tore you on that right side." And I hadn't told her anything. This is exactly what happened. And she said he got a slight dislocation of that shoulder, and she did some, I mean, he was crying, he didn't like this, she did some, you know, not big moves, just realigned him, and no more colic.
Oh, Ali, that how powerful is that? And now if you'd taken him to the doctor in this day and age, he would be put on Gaviscon, and, you know, just, it's crazy actually what they're doing to the babies and the children of this day and age. It breaks my heart. And I understand that a lot of mums don't have, you know, the ability to I guess think of any other narrative, because they don't know about it, and they don't know that there are these options. It is like, even in the 13 years that I've lived here in Ireland, there's been massive changes in people's awareness around exactly like what you said, bringing them to the osteopath or craniosacral therapy. It's definitely changed immensely. But that's such an incredible story. It's so empowering to hear those kind of stories and know that ladies like her are around, and just no information. And from that, just tuning into his energy and his structural alignment, she can pick up that information. It's so present, isn't it, to be able to do that?
And it was, you know, the other thing of telling that story online here as well is that, you know, homeopathy has a lot of answers. It is an amazing, amazing medicine. But it's not a panacea, you know, that we need to do other things. And physical alignment, sometimes the craniosacral therapy, osteopathy, cranial osteopathy is really useful as an adjuvant to, or an adjuvant, I never know how to say that word, to homeopathy. You know, like I go for cranial sacral.
Yeah, probably, to use them in tandem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I agree. Like I
think you're right,
regularly for structural stuff. You have to.
Yeah. Well, I mountain bike, so, you know, I'm hurtling down mountains, so I need to have an alignment every so often. You know, I just took up mountain biking late. I'm 55 this year, and the last couple of years I've been mountain biking, and I just love it. You know, I say to people, it's better than meditation. It's like, you know, you have to be so in the moment, because if you're not in the moment, you'll end up splattered on the side of a mountain, you know. So, and I've come a cropper a few times, so I need some craniosacral every so often.
There's some great tracks around you, isn't there? I think friends of mine that live in Dublin, they often talk about some amazing tracks that have been set up there and recently, and
we've got Ballinasstone and Ticknock, and also the Gap mountain bike park up just up the road from me. So yeah, it's brilliant.
Oh, fab.
But
That's
the other
great.
bit, you know, you were asking me about being busy, you know, like, you know, how's the practice? Really busy, you know, like my practice is pretty much steadily busy anyway, but really busy in the last 2 while, treating a lot of people with long COVID, so people that have you know, had COVID, tested COVID, and have ended up with symptoms that have, you know, just continued after COVID. So exhaustion, headaches, common one that comes through, but exhaustion was the big one.
Yes,
And what I'm finding is, so people, we've had a few, and I've treated 56 people who tested positive for COVID as well. So that included people with underlying health conditions. So these are the ones that tested positive. I also think I've treated a lot of people who didn't bother to go for a test, but also had the symptoms. And so I also want to say to people, you know, homeopathy doesn't treat diseases. We treat the people with the diseases. So everybody that has COVID, there are common symptoms that run through, you know, people testing positive for that virus or having that virus. But it will depend on the kind of bedrock, the underlying symptoms that you have as to how severe that's going to be. Like I've had COVID as well. So my son had it, my ex-partner had it, my son had it, and I got it. And my son, age 15, sailed through it within 2 days, not bothered, just had homeopathy. I just had homeopathy, but it was a little more tricky for me to get through because I'm older, I'm 55, nearly 55, and I smoked in my 20s. Up until probably about 32, actually, so 20s and 30s, early 30s. And so part of COVID for me was I was coughing up stuff, and one day I was like, oh, this tastes like tobacco. So my body, even though I've done a lot of clearing, had a lot of remedies, the only, you know, pharmaceutical medicines I've had since I was 24, and since I stopped the steroids and the antihistamines, is that I've had half a Disprin in 30 years. Wow. And I took half a Disprin because I lacerated the corner of my eye on my son's second stage car seat. Oh, Janey, I'm not kidding you.
Oh,
it was actually more painful than giving birth. It was unbelievable.
Oh, you poor thing.
I went to the eye and ear hospital, and even with, you know, a patch on the eye, your eye is still moving underneath your lid, even with your eye closed, with the lid closed. So I couldn't sleep that night. I was in such pain, and I was taking remedies, you know, Bellis perennis, Euphrasia, Arnica. So I was lashing in the remedies, and I knew I'd be fine the next day, but I couldn't sleep because every time, like literally, I'd be wincing with the pain.
It's like a hot spot of nerves anyway, your eye, you know.
It was unbelievable. I mean, you know, it's a while ago now. It was 15. So what? Yeah.
Only half a Disprin, Ali. I think you've done tremendously well.
Wait until you hear. So that was 14 years ago. My son was about 1 at the time. So I said it was his second stage car seat. So half a Disprin, I thought, okay, I won't take paracetamol, like a full-on paracetamol or Nurofen or anything like that, because it'll probably kill me. I've not taken anything like that in such a long time.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, what's something that's quite close to a herbal medicine? It isn't a herbal medicine, but Disprin, essentially an anodine, and made from the bark of a tree. It's salicylic acid. So I thought, okay, I'll take half a Disprin. Yeah, I'll take half a Disprin and I'll see how I get on. Now wait until you hear. Half a Disprin lasted me pain relief for 12 hours, and within half an hour I could smell the aspirin in my armpits.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah, it's gone through your system quickly.
Yeah, and it worked brilliantly. So I was able to get to sleep. I woke up and I still had a bit of pain, and I continued the remedies. I went back to the eye and ear hospital. They asked me to come back in 48 hours because they were worried about it. And I went back, and they took the patch off and said, oh my goodness, it's like you haven't damaged your what
lacerated at all. Yeah, that's often a response you hear from doctors. You know, I've had people go in to get when I've prescribed something to help the bone knit back together, some Vitam, you know, and it's just, they're like, it doesn't even look like it's been broken. You can't see.
Yeah, my
son had, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he broke his foot, and they said, you know, he'll be in a cast for 6 to 8 weeks, you know, a boot cast for 6 to 8 weeks, and you know, one of those strap-on ones rather than the plaster of Paris. But anyway, he was in one of those boots, and sure, within 10 days he'd taken the boot off, and he says, I don't need that anymore. And I'd given him some Phytum, Arnica, Bellis Perennis, and he was fine.
This is the, you know, this is the beauty of it, that it fast tracks the healing, and particularly, you know, in your case with your eye, because you had such a I guess clean vessel, you know, that your body hasn't been contaminated with loads of medication. You know, things work very quickly. In homeopathy, we call it your vital force. Okay, some people will liken it to things like prana or chi, or in New Zealand we call it mana. And this is what keeps you alive, your spirit, you know. So when you're living a life that's as natural as possible, given the nature of where we are at the minute with all the pollutants and stuff and Wi-Fi and whatnot, you heal quicker, and sometimes you end up being better than you were, you know, beforehand. With homeopathy, people actually start living their bliss and finding their calling in life. It's not, you know, it goes like what you had with the dream. It's so deep on some levels. It stimulates and provokes a healing that's unexpected at times, isn't it? You know, I think that's the magic of it as well, that you haven't just come in to get the laceration sorted on your eye. Often it's so much more than that.
And you know what was amazing with having COVID and that is that my energy after having COVID is much better than it was pre-COVID. So I see it as a like an upgrade. It's like my immune system needed that in order to have a big clear out, essentially.
Yeah.
Now, if I hadn't taken homeopathy, I probably would have ended up with long COVID, you know, symptoms of exhaustion and anything. The long COVID is essentially underlying symptoms that have never been properly addressed. Some of it, you know, some people have said to me, yeah, but I never, you know, like I've never had kidney problems before. So why am I suddenly, you know, since COVID, why have I got kidney problems? And I say, okay, tell me about your family history. And you find out that mother has only got one kidney, or there's, you know, kidney stuff in the grandparents. So not only does long COVID reveal your known underlying health conditions, it will also show up any weaknesses that have come through the ancestral line.
Yeah, those inherent, yeah, okay, that's amazing. So with your, when you had, talk us through a little bit what happened, Ali, when you got COVID, and you know what symptoms were more striking for you, and then maybe possibly what remedies you took even.
Well, I like at the start of all of this, when they kind of announced we got this virus around, I started to take extra vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc. Partly, I really upped my zinc because one of the symptoms of COVID is a loss of taste and smell, and that is a zinc deficiency. It's one of the known zinc deficiencies. So when you get COVID, your immune system needs zinc to produce T cells, which is one arm of the immune system, essentially. So literally, when you get the loss of taste and smell, it's your immune system going like a big siren, going,
hello,
I need zinc, I need zinc, I need zinc, right? So that information, as far as I'm concerned, should have been given out by governments worldwide, and certainly in Ireland. Like the responses from government around this have been, in my opinion, woeful, because they didn't put the immune system at the center of their response. They went into, you know, typical kind of pharmaceutical responses, which is they went to lockdown and mask, rather than what can we do to strengthen the immune system, because 99.7% of people survive coronavirus. And they survive it because their immune system is intact enough to be able to deal with it. So my thoughts from that, of course, is, well, then what do I need to do to strengthen my immune system so that I'm able to cope with this. So it didn't prevent me from getting COVID, clearly, but I think that it probably, and now I don't know this 100%, but I think it probably helped. So I never got the loss of taste or smell, for instance, because I've been taking zinc. I upped my zinc and my vitamin C as soon as I got it. So my first symptoms were really achy body, and then I went into high temperatures. So, I mean, the highest I got was probably about 39. And I'm prescribing myself remedies at this point. I also, so my son had it first, and leading up to this, and I really recommend people get one of these to have it at home. I bought an oximeter, so that, you know, the little thing that slips on the finger to tell you.
It's so important. Yeah.
So important. Because if you can keep an eye on that, then you know, then you've got, you know, you don't go into that fear place of, oh my God, what happens if, you know, my oxygen levels drop. So I had some tightness on the chest, so achy and shivery, temperature, some tightness on the chest, and then I went into the cough and mucus kind of coming up, and that's when, as I said, I got the taste of, I was like, oh my goodness, that tastes like tobacco. So then I started to take some of our homeopathic remedies that detox tobacco, so tobacco in potency, etc. As well as some of the, you know, the our chest remedies, Circuline, phosphorus came up, etc. So it took me about 5 days to get through it, and then as I'm, you know, to get through that stage of it, and then as I'm coming out of it, I also got really strong headaches, and it's not something I get. So I started to think, okay, what's going on here? Like, why am I getting these headaches? And you know, what kind of dropped in, what I understood was that I'd you know, mountain biking, I'd fallen off. I used to play a lot of hockey. I've had a few whacks on the head. And I thought, okay, I wonder if this is some old concussion coming through. So I took Bellus perennis and the headaches went completely resolved. So Bellus perennis, for people watching, one of our remedies for concussion.
Bellus perennis, I think, is, everybody knows what arnica is. You know, it's like everyone knows arnica. Bellus perennis is like, it goes to a deeper level than arnica goes to.
Yeah, it's like that beer ad, you know, where they said reaches the parts that other beers can't reach. Well, Bellus perennis is like that. It reaches the parts that arnica can't reach.
Yeah. It is an amazing remedy, actually, for C-sections, Bellus perennis. It's just a profound remedy for healing. You know, if anyone out there's had a C-section, and Bellus perennis is such an incredible healer for that, you know, that deep wound. And sometimes when they pull baby out, things get shuffled around a bit. You went through it then, Ali.
Yeah, it was a big clear out. It was like an upgrade for the immune system. It was an opportunity to clear out. And it's always interesting, that one, because, you know, as a parent, it's like when our kids get acute, so they get, you know, like, if, you know, like things like chickenpox or, you know, German measles or scarlatina, which is the, you know, scarlet fever, which is like a lower version of scarlet fever. So my son had scarlatina, he had chickenpox. And after they get those, they often make developmental leaps. So after chickenpox, Zach's speech came on really, my son's speech came on really like in leaps and bounds. So one of the things I also want to get across to people is, we've been taught through this to be really frightened of coronavirus, to be really like, oh my God, it can kill you. So remember 99.7% of people survive this. And they survive it because they have an immune system that's fairly intact. So make sure you're taking vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, known immune supports, basically, because that will improve your chances of surviving it. Go and see homeopaths. You know, if you've got underlying health conditions, go and see a homeopath now. If you've got underlying health conditions and you get coronavirus, I would really recommend you contact a homeopath. As I said, I've treated 50 people who were tested positive through doing the PCR test. And as I said, there's many others I've treated that didn't do the test but certainly have the symptoms. I've had people, you know, the oldest of those are 79, people with COPD, with cancer, people with asthma, people with heart disease. So, and none of those people needed to be hospitalized, and all of them got through just with homeopathy, and the odd lemon sip, actually, if you lemon sip.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well done. It's amazing. You know, I think that
yeah, that's the wonder of our remedies.
yeah.
I would really like to cross to people, don't be frightened of coronavirus. There are things that you can actively do to boost your immune system, that, you know, improve your chances of surviving it. And if you get it, there's certainly, you know, answers in terms of, you know, using homeopathy, but also, and you know, this is controversial to talk about because you know, many governments have stopped this information getting out, but there is something called a Z pack, and I'm not, you know, not promoting pharmaceutical medicines, but you know, there are pharmaceutical medicines that are actually being shown to work really well for people with coronavirus as well.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and one of those that I find fascinating is HCQ, which is hydroxychloroquine, which is you know, the treatment they use for malaria, preventative for malaria. And what's so interesting with HCQ is it's a big spleen remedy, and they only prescribe it with, the spleen is part of the immune system, and they only prescribe it with zinc, or they give it to in a Z pack.
I heard that, yes.
And zinc, so what HCQ does, it seems to, it helps the cells use zinc really quickly.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to see is a study where they just give people HCQ, or they just use zinc, because I wonder whether, you know, they seem to work really well together, but actually whether just zinc in and of itself. But the HCQ is interesting, and it's interesting, Janey, because as you and I know, we have a homeopathic remedy made from that China.
Yeah.
One of the remedies that I use to, alongside, you know, the people that I assisted, alongside them taking homeopathics, I also had them on vitamin C, zinc, and vitamin D, and I gave them low potency, essentially low potency.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of homeopathy. Nearly everything that the pharmaceutical companies have made synthetically, we already have as a natural remedy and can prescribe it like that, low potency, daily, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, depending on your needs. But yeah, China. A lot of people have been talking about the I can never say it.
Hydroxychloroquine.
You know, and that seems to be the only drug that's been in circulation, and there's not many others that have been kind of talked about for helping. And I mean, what were your views on the ventilating, Ali?
Well, you know, on one level I can't really speak to that because I never put anybody in a ventilator, and I don't have any you know, knowledge of those, except it seems like what's kind of come out is that it's not a great idea. You know, that it puts the body under, and this is the, you know, it puts the body under so much stress. But this, you know, this is the thing, isn't it? It's back to that piece of the prevention is better than cure. And that if those people that ended up on ventilators had been taking vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc, and that information had been given out, and in fact, you know, given how much money they've spent on advertising campaigns and all of that, both in the UK and masks and blah blah blah, why the hell didn't they use some of that money to have, you know, ads on TV saying to people, please take vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, and here's the scientific evidence that shows that those things work and how they work, so please take those. So it's back to that thing, it's like the ventilators are the last resort, but if there'd been other, you know, resorts used, other things used, the person probably would not have ended up been needing to be put on a ventilator.
Yeah, those fundamental kind of basic supports in place, but there was no there was no advertising for them or promotion or anybody other than kind of alternative therapists or people, you know, who had an opposing view to the narrative that was being pushed on us.
And what's ridiculous is that there's so many people that you know, I've even had nurses argue with me, like 2 nurses on social media, say the immune system can't clear this. And in which case I've gone back and said, well, how come 99.7% of people survive it? How do you think they survived it? Do you think it was luck? Not luck. It's to do with the state of their immune system. It's like, you and I have an understanding of susceptibility.
Yes.
So susceptibility, for people that are listening and watching, the susceptibility is like, what is the state of your health?
Yeah.
Like, so here's an example. So, most of us grown up in a family, most of us, like, 4 or 5 in the family, maybe less. But anyway, grow up in a family or in a work situation, and 2 of the people in the office or 2 of the family members get a cold, and the rest of the family members don't get a cold. Well, what is the difference? What makes the difference? And the difference is the state of the immune system. So that should be the thing that is put right at the center of any responses to a virus, any response. That has to be at the center, and it wasn't put at the center. They did this, the secondary responses like lockdown, and the lockdowns have had such catastrophic impact on people's mental health, on people's loss of life.
It's just crazy.
Which is pushing people into poverty. Poverty is the biggest killer. Your chances of dying increase alongside you being poor. And that's from the World Health Organization. So we've got lockdowns, we've pushed people into, so the mortality from those is probably going to be higher than the mortality from coronavirus. And if, I'm getting on my soapbox now, but if they had given out information, basic information about the immune system right from the beginning, we would not have had the mortality.
I agree 100%. I think my practice, I tend to kind of have a lot of anxiety related people, and this past year I've had so many new clients who've never had anxiety in their entire life, and because of everything that's unfolded the way it has, things like not fear of the virus themselves, but fear of giving it to their elderly parents, or fear of giving it to their colleagues, or fear of going out in public and being condemned, for just going out, and fear, just so wrapped up in this ball of anxiety that they're like a shell of themselves. They can't function anymore. They can't think straight. They can't sleep. All those natural, normal things. They don't want to go back to work. It's just heartbreaking, really heartbreaking.
It is. And it's not like, it's like any virus. If you've got underlying health conditions, it's not a walk in the park. And yes, people die. People die of, a huge amount of people die of flu every year. But we weren't, if we had, on the news a ticker tape of how many people die of flu every day, we'd all be terrified of flu. So part of it is conditioning. Part of it is, we've been told to be frightened of something that actually really the mortality figures don't support that we should be so frightened of it. And also that, as I said, we should, really focus on immune health. And that would include as well, like, making sure governments legislate for clean food, removing pesticides from our food, removing artificial fertilizers from our food, removing all the shite from our water, cleaning up our air. It's like all this focus on CO2 levels, but not focusing on nitrous oxide or in the air, or the pesticides in our food. Some of it is very crazy to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. Really... I think someone posted a while ago actually how hell-bent people are of looking at the ingredients in their food, right, to make sure that it's kosher, particularly for feeding kids and children. And then I guess the whole thing with the vaccine coming out has raised another level of awareness in people who wouldn't ever look at the insert on those vaccines to see what the ingredients is. And why aren't people doing that? If they're so interested in what they're putting into their bodies, and they're looking at the food ingredients. Why are they not taking that same attention to detail and looking at what is getting injected to them as well? And then the same as that, like what's in our water. Ireland is one of the most fluoridated countries in the world, and it's such a toxic time bomb, isn't it? You know,
it's listed as a neurotoxin. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. It's still denied that. Even my dentist, he wanted to put an amalgam filling in my tooth, and I was like, no way, like you should know by now. There's enough scientific evidence out there that proves how poisonous mercury is for our teeth. He thinks I'm a complete quack because I'm a homeopath. You know, he's like, no, this is what we're doing, or it's 150 euros for a white filling.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. All we can do is, on that subject of maxing, because I always say to people, don't just take don't just look at one side. Always check out the other side, and then from that, make an informed decision.
Absolutely.
And that does include reading the manufacturer's inserts. It does include looking at the ingredients and all of that. Sure.
Yeah. Do your research and decide for yourselves. It's tough to navigate some of this stuff, especially when you're a new parent or a young parent, or you're somebody who's a natural worrier, or you've got anxiety. It's just, and this year in particular has seen everybody on unparalleled shaky ground. It's been, even for somebody like me, and I'm sure for you, Ali, I've had my moments where you just think, oh my goodness, how much more can we all take? We've been pushed and pulled in every single direction. And I've seen my homeopath, I think, 4 times in the past year, and thank goodness for him, because he's pulled me out of these. Yeah, not for me that it's been too bad, but just to have that support. And even just, I know for me, talking things through is a huge part of my processing and my healing. And I think that's part of the homeopathic consultation, for those of you that don't know, is you're really heard, and we sit and listen to you, and we'll ask you things that people have never ever asked you, and it helps you to identify problems and issues and illnesses, and to connect with them on a whole nother kind of playing field. And that conversation that you have and that dialogue you have it's healing, isn't it? It's really cathartic.
Yeah, having space to talk about what's going on. Absolutely.
Yeah,
and all that. And even starting to make that mind-body connection. It's like, okay, so I remember working many years ago with a woman with breast cancer, and it was in her left breast, and I said, look, why, this may be BS, but why do you think your body has shown cancer there? Why didn't you end up with stomach cancer or liver cancer or pancreatic cancer? When you think of breasts, what do you think of? And I thought she was going to say, she's a mother, and I thought she was going to say breastfeeding, and she said relationship, because there's 2 of them. And I said, okay, tell me more about your relationship. And she had never spoken about this. She was in a really tricky marriage, with a very kind of cold, cut off man. And just having that space to talk about what it was like for her being in that marriage. And she'd been married, I think, at that point, from what I remember, about 28 years. And just having that conversation with me, and combined with a remedy, Staphysagria, the tumor in the breast was completely gone within 8 weeks.
Wow. Yeah.
And she left her husband.
I bet she did if she took Staph aureus. Yeah, give her back her power. Wow, I love those stories. It's incredible.
So really, it is. It's really important to kind of have that kind of query, and not as a self-blamey thing, but just it's like, you know, these symptoms don't just arrive apropos of nothing. They come to wake you up to more of who you can be.
Yeah.
You know, and
signposts.
And to, yeah. Exactly.
Well, listen, Ali, maybe we should, you know, wrap it up here, but I guess people are going to be really interested in finding, you know, connecting with you. Are you available? You're working online? Yeah.
Working
and
online,
so
and
how do people find you? Have you got a website?
I don't have a website, never advertised. It's always been word of mouth, but they'll find me if they want to send me an email, ali_homeopath@hotmail.com.
Brilliant.
They want to send me an email. If anybody,
Ali.
you know, one of the things, _homeopath@hotmail.com. I mean, one of the things about, you know, these kind of conversations as well, it's like you're just dipping and tipping the edge, and, you know, people might have questions from listening to the two of us. So yeah, definitely put them in the comments. But if people have got anything they want to ask me, absolutely email me.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, if anybody feels guided that they want to come and see me as a homeopath, then absolutely send me an email for sure.
Yeah, amazing.
And likewise, what's your email, just so you get yours in too?
Mine's Janey@sageandseer.com. I'll put actually in the let me just say, if you've watched all the way to the end, thanks very much. And this is my first interview and Sage and Seer chats, and I am the most untechnological person you could find. Okay, my computer often when I walk past it, Ali, it will just have a spaz. So bear with me. I'm hoping for the next one to go live on YouTube. So Ali and I have recorded this one, and I'm going to load it up. And if you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and Ali and I will check back. And if you've got something that's more personal, do message Ali or myself. And if you know, if we can help, then that's what we're here to do. And it's been a really amazing, insightful conversation, Ali. So thanks very much for coming on, and it's just great to
lovely to see you.
Expand on the friendship. And thanks to everybody for tuning in.
Good to see you, Janie. Good to talk with you.
Yeah.
Bye and bye.
Lots of love, everyone.
Okay. Yeah, take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You too. Take care. Have a great weekend.
And you. Bye now.
Bye.